But let's start off with a team who has been in the news for the last couple off seasons, and that's the Texas Rangers. This team has spent crazy amounts of money over the past two off seasons. I mean, obviously only rivaling the New York Mets with the money being spent. There was an opportunity that we were talking about it before when we were doing notes. Did the Rangers actually spend more than the Mets? Once we finally sat down and did the math, no, it was not the case. You know, when you talk about Verlander or Scherzer, they're way ahead. But Corey Seager, $325 million, 175 for Semin, and then now 185 for Jacob deGrom. And that's just their top three. They spent a lot of money for a team that did not make the playoffs last year. They obviously had some issues with their manager, at least so they believe, and they fired him mid-season. Now they're moving on. Who knows if that was a scapegoat? As I know, I can see it in your eyes. I think that might be the case as well, but who knows? However, is this the year that we see the Rangers finally live up to talent level expectations? Because there's no doubt that talent is there. We're in a division that is not the hardest, but yet not the easiest. Is this division where the Rangers can finally get to where they need to be?
I mean, they haven't had this good a chance in a long time. And it's funny you talk about how much they've spent, and I just added up quickly this year and last year, $820 million, and that's for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 players. Just adding them up quickly, it's insane to me. And when you put that much commitment into, and we're going to talk about it, but then when you kind of beef up your rotation the way they have, you gotta think they at least think they have a chance, right? It's going to be tough playing in the same division as the near perfect Houston Astros, but they certainly look like they believe they have a shot in one way or another. So maybe it's not a cakewalk for the Astros this year.
Over $800 million spent over the last two off seasons. Last year, they were 68 and 94. When you think of that in perspective, you're obviously putting yourself now at the 7th largest payroll in MLB all around throughout your organization. And obviously we talk about the big spending they've had over the last two off seasons. There's a lot of questions, a lot of people probably on the hot seat if this doesn't work out. They are no doubt in the all in. They have to be all in. However, when you do look at this team, and when you do look at what's next for them, you have to look at this new rotation. Jacob deGrom, obviously he's the best pitcher in the league when healthy, Sean. I think that is something that you have to put as an asterisk. I hate to say it, but we saw it with a lot of Mets pitching over the last few years, especially with Jacob deGrom over the last year, if you will. When he is healthy, he is the best pitcher in the league. End of sentence. I don't know if you can make that comment. I don't think you have an argument for that. Now, if he is healthy this year, will we see him in the AL Cy Young discussions this season? We're going to see him possibly in the AL Cy Young. It's interesting. We see Verlander flip to the NL. Now we see deGrom flip to the AL. What's your thoughts on deGrom?
Yeah, I think, right off the bat, before you even kind of look at who else is in the running, you just pencil his name into, the top 5 at least in the Cy Young race. And whether or not he can stay healthy, he hasn't pitched 100 innings since 2019, but he was reasonably stable before that, right? So, maybe there's some optimism and some hope. I mean, it's not like he has a Carlos Correa ankle or anything, right? So maybe it'll be just fine. But yeah, I mean, there's no question. I don't know, like we could throw out a whole bunch of superfluous descriptions, but I mean, he is one of the best pitchers in baseball. And if he can stay healthy, he might be just the best in of any starting pitcher in Major League Baseball. So it's a great move. It's a risky one, but I think the Rangers at least believe that it's going to pay off for them. Time will tell, though.
It sounds like he wants to be in Texas. He didn't even allow the New York Mets to allow a counter offer or even just give him an offer. As once free agency opened, he got the deal he wanted with the Rangers and agreed to it. There was a report out that the Mets didn't even get an opportunity to counter to that. So it sounds like he wants to be where he's at with the Texas Rangers. It'll be very interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing him play this year as healthy. I mean, anytime we see him on the mound, it's an exciting game. seeing him out of the NL East, a very tough division, don't get me wrong, but just seeing him against different competition, obviously against a Houston Astros team or the Angels team, him going against Otani and Trout 13 games a year doesn't sound too bad to me. All right, at the beginning of last offseason, Corey Seager, Marcus Semien, they were the big additions. Last year, that team disappointed big time, and both of those players were in that with the disappointments. There's no doubt about it. They helped this team not almost just slide under 100 losses. It's crazy to think this team in the offseason last year, many thought we're going to win this division. I mean, they counted out the Astros. They said the Rangers are going to do that. We're kind of already seeing that a little bit this year with the hype. I think the hype is a little more warranted now that you have these two players plus what you added. However, you got to get Seager and Semien on board. A lot of disappointing things last year for both of them and this Ranger squad. What can we expect from them this year?
Yeah, I think more of the same. And actually, when you look at Corey Seager and what he was able to put up last year, we're looking at 33 home runs, weighted runs created plus of 117. He had a bit. How do I say it? He had more trouble getting on base than he normally does throughout his career. But the good news is that he's projected to go right back to his what you would normally expect. 27 home runs, 133 weighted runs created plus, and of course, you're going to get solid defense at the shortstop position. So I don't know that the Rangers are necessarily worried about Corey Seager. Now, Marcus Semien may be a different story, of course, because he got off to a pretty rotten start. In particular, I think his whole first half of the season, without looking it up, was just atrocious. But he managed to kind of salvage it, and finish worth 4 wins above replacement. 107 weighted runs created plus, so above average bat. But for him, I think the expectations shouldn't be as high as Corey Seager, offensively anyway. And then, of course, at second base, playing, again, solid defense. They're fine up the middle. I don't know that necessarily the Texas Rangers' fortunes last season had as much to do with these two as we might think. I think the rotation being the first culprit, if you will. As long as they can go back to being just themselves, I think they'll be just fine.
68-94 last season was the Texas Rangers. I think this is the easiest question that I'm going to ask you in all of these when we talk over under. So I'm going to add a little bit to the Texas Rangers comment because I think it's an easy answer that they're going to go over. So I think, and I'm sure you think that as well. So what's your thoughts on this? Go ahead and pound in your over under. But I also want to know, will they be able to compete for the top of the AL West?
Oh, they're obviously over, and I think they do. I think they do compete for the division because it is going to be, I believe, a 2-horse race anyway between them and the Astros. So if anybody is going to catch Houston, it's Texas, and it'll come down to that revamped starting rotation. Not just DeGrom, but Nate Eovaldi and Andrew Heaney all signed. They traded for Jake Odorizzi. Their starting rotation is good, but it also has depth to it as well, which is something that the Rangers haven't had in a long time. So if Houston's going to be challenged for that division lead, this is the year, and it's going to be the Rangers for sure.